this and that and what the fuck else, episode 122. In this episode I'll be talking a bit about NATO, quite a bit about NATO, the UK, Ukraine, quite a lot about Ukraine, and then some stuff from the US, and what the fuck, that will most probably make you also go, what the fuck is that? But things are rough here in South Africa, and the society is getting restless. I personally believe that there is a lot of elements that are playing together that could very easily make this powder keg erupt. And we've got that story about that Miller guy from America that wants to take over Eskom, and he's changed his group on Facebook and YouTube, called it South Africa First. What the hell is that? An American running a show, South Africa First. But he is finding a lot of people in the country following him. And there is something very fishy about that guy. And if you go and you really research his history, he's a dodgy guy. And I've said it on Twitter, I'll say it here. There is rumors that he is a front for the CIA. And they are part and parcel of that color revolution movement that the CIA drives all over the world. So, be careful of that man. If the things that I've listened to, the videos that I've listened to, it's quite obvious he wants his hands on Eskom, on the generation plants. That's what he wants. And as I said in a previous Briekmerke, if the Americans gets their hands on our power generation plants, they've got the country by the balls. Be careful. And then later this evening I listened to a voice note that 00 Des did on Telegram, which was extremely disturbing. And I am telling you now, my view of that guy has took a 180 turn. He made a fucking statement that all Afrikaner boere are traitors and that it is part of our culture to be traitors. So, how's that? Coming from a fucking Southie, and as my grandfather would have said, a bloedsap. That's what he is. I'll see how things move forward. I have responded to his shit on Telegram, and I haven't made a tweet about it on Twitter in which I tagged him. Let's see if he is brave enough to respond. Calling me a traitor, fuck you. But in any case, look at this beautiful landscape. Amazing shot. And I must say, I would have loved to be the photographer here. That's the biggest problem I have with the shot, that I didn't take it. But to be quite honest, this was entered into a landscape category in a salon. From me, I'll give it about a 7, because shots like this needs to be either square cropped or landscape. But that doesn't take anything away from this. And then we get to this meme. Take a good look at that image. See the faces there that is faded out in the image. And then you see Zelensky. That is the company in which he is currently. Doesn't spell good things for him. If I was in his shoes, I would be nervous. And then we get to NATO. Russia-China partnership scares NATO. NATO is concerned about the developing cooperation between Russia and China. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that these countries are promoting an alternative world order that the West does not like. The Russian and Chinese authorities are improving economic cooperation and partnership in the military sphere. It's also important that China not only did not condemn the special operation in Ukraine, as did the US satellites, but also placed the blame for inflicting the conflict on NATO. The Secretary General of the Alliance drew attention to the fact that Russia and China are establishing ties with Iran and North Korea. They stand up for values that violate our faith and freedom and democracy, Stoltenberg said indignantly. In his opinion, Russia and the countries of the West will always be in conflict, and this is not only about disagreements over Ukraine. Problems in these relations will remain even after the end of the conflict, General Secretary is sure. The fears of the North Atlantic Alliance are not groundless. Before the new year, Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping held talks at which they warmly greeted each other and discussed common successes. Calling his interlocutor dear friend, the Russian president expressed the desire to improve the interaction between Chinese and Russian armies, and the Chinese president said that these countries are ready to become Russia's global partner even in the face of geopolitical instability. Now, I have a lot to say about this. Point number one, who the hell is Stoltenberg to have anything to say about the relationship between Russia and China? Russia doesn't have things to say between the relationships between all the European countries and Canada and England and America. They can do it freely, but this is the way the West is operating. Arrogant fuckers, that's what they are. They are free to supply as much weaponry into Ukraine as they want, but if Russia buys drones from Iran, all hell breaks loose and they want to sanction Iran and they want to do all sorts of things about it. They are currently maintaining a lot of soldiers in the Ukraine. And those soldiers are in Ukraine military uniforms, but they are NATO soldiers actually. And there is more than enough evidence about that. But then they want to give Serbia a lot of shit because some Serbs wants to fight for Russia. This arrogance and hypocrisy of the West needs to go away. They are lining themselves up for big shit. I see Poland and Germany is making all sorts of noises, and they are Poland specifically is squaring up for a fight with the Russians. And I've read an article earlier today, I'll have it in a future Skidmark, where some ex-NATO guy said, there's no way that NATO countries will honor Article 5 if Poland gets themselves into a scrap with Russia. But the reality is simple. The West is basically out of arms. Look how they're scrounging around now to get a few tanks to send to Ukraine. In the meantime, Russia has got thousands of tanks, and they produce 1,000 tanks per month. So, think about that. The West is basically out of ammunition. The one specific caliber, Ukraine, shoots away in one day what the West can produce in a month. So, the West better wake up. And then there's this. But remember, fellow peasants, it is Russia that is the baddie. Now look at that map. The blue is countries hosting US military bases. The red is countries hosting Russian military bases. The pink is countries hosting both US and Russian military bases. And I tried to find a pink spot, and I only find that little one there up, looks like Georgia or somewhere. In any case, not important. The fact of the matter is, Russia is called the bad guy, but look at that blue. And then there's this map to make you even think about it again. Look at that, Russia and China, and then you look at all the NATO and Western forces gathered on the borders around those two countries. Think about that. And then we get to the United Kingdom, and this about Bojo the Clown. Loose cannon, Boris told stay out of Ukraine. The top brass warned Johnson to stop seeking publicity in the war zone. Stay away from Ukraine, such is the appeal to the reckless Boris Johnson published today on the front page of the Independent newspaper. The West made a mistake trying to destroy Russia using PMC. Ukraine, you will not defeat Russia and the consequences for you will be sad. Yeah, I don't know what the story is with the UK. They are a country that is collapsing. Their army, something like 70,000 people. Can you believe that? And they want to fight with Russia. Then there's this interesting tidbit. CNN exclusive. A single Iranian attack drone found to contain parts from more than a dozen US companies. And now they're all up in arms about it. The next is quite disturbing. Ukraine promises strikes deeper into Russia. There will be new strikes deep into Russian territory. Kirill Budanov, Ukraine's top spy, said on Tuesday. However, he neither denied nor claimed responsibility for a recent attack on a Russian military facility. Speaking to ABC News, Budanov, who heads Kiev's main intelligence directorate, was asked whether it was Ukraine which had conducted a recent attack on a Russian airbase. I can't give an answer right now to this question, only after ending of this war, he replied, adding though that he was glad to see the strike. In recent weeks, Moscow has on numerous occasions accused Kiev of carrying out strikes on its military facilities inside the Russian territory. Last week, the Russian Defense Ministry said that a Ukrainian drone attempt to target the Ingles airfield in Saratov region, which hosts the strategic bombers, has been attacked. Now, I'm not going to try and be a military analyst of note or what, but the reality is, and the fact is, Russia has not unleashed hell on Ukraine yet. They're fighting carefully to prevent unnecessary civilian deaths, and they don't want to lose unnecessary manpower. So they're not reckless, they fight carefully. But if the Ukraine keeps on escalating, the shit is going to fly. Bakhmut is very close to falling. Once that is gone, it will be a matter of time, days, I would say weeks. And Ukraine is completely out of the Donbass. And then I suspect we're going to see things change, because then the Russians will fight more aggressively. The reality is the Russians are busy destroying the Ukrainian air defense systems. With every one of the missile attacks, a few Ukrainian air defense systems is taken out, because they can see where the defenses are coming from on the incoming missiles, and then they go for it. And I believe that they are wiping out that air defense systems so that their bombers can operate more free. And then there was this interesting thing. This is the guy from the PMC Mozart, which is an American equivalent to the PMC Wagner. Mercenaries, actually, private soldier companies. American military instructor, the US Navy, speaking about the problems of the Ukrainian armed forces and touching upon some more global issues. The Ukrainian army has never really embraced the Western way of doing things. Ukrainians have almost annoying insubordination, lack of mission command, and too much Soviet mentality. Foreign mercenaries have legitimate complaints about the command they fall under. This is a very dirty war. A number of things Ukrainians do to Russian POWs violate the applicable laws and conventions. The Americans distance themselves from such as much as they can, disqualifying the units killing POWs from receiving further training, and the American trainers have been shown such videos plenty of times. More generally, Ukraine is a very corrupt society run by fucked up people. The US strategy is not to make Ukraine win, but rather to bleed Russia. Over half of the countries in the world haven't condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Putin is very carefully excising the US from global markets. And there's a lot of truth in what he is saying here. You must take a note, the guy was drunk, and in my mind, there's an old saying, in vino veritas, in the wine lies the truth. I believe the guy. Ukraine says it will target Russian soldiers at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Volodymyr Zelensky vows troops based at Europe's largest nuclear plant will become special targets. Now this is what he does, and they publish it, but the West keeps quiet. Reality is, if he bombs that nuclear plant and he hits the right spot, a large part of Eastern Europe could be wiped out. But Zelensky is the blue-eyed boy, and he can do whatever he wants, and nobody will ever talk to him about his marriage. And then this is just a little joke. If you can remember, the Kiev Postal Services made a big stamp like this when the Crimea bridge was blown up, and the people in Kiev were lining up to get photographs taken in front of that stamp. Now they've done a stamp of Moscow burning. Ukroposta has installed a new large postage stamp in Kiev near the city's state administration. This time a burning Kremlin, called Explosion over Kremlin. Previously a stamp photoshopped with the blown up Crimean bridge was put up in the same place from which tens of thousands of Ukrainians took selfies. True, immediately after that, thermal power plants, substations, railway junctions, and critical infrastructure blazed. In local chats they write, so far, units are being photographed with the majority pulling scarves over their faces. I wonder why. And then there is this from Ukraine. It wasn't anti-terrorist. It was a punitive operation, said Vasily Prozorov, a former officer of the Ukrainian Security Service. He spoke about the actions against the population of Donbass by the Ukrainian authorities since 2014. Punitive operation. Think about that. The Ukrainian government used the Ukrainian army against the Russians living in Ukraine. And this is a long story, and I'm not going to read all of it, but the most important part here, Mark Dugan brings all the pieces of the puzzle together to shed light on the horrendous truth about the extent of Big Pharma's involvement in Ukraine. New resistant infections were found near the notorious Ukrainian biolabs, and Ukrainian soldiers catching them were treated with super expensive experimental drugs in European hospitals. Furthermore, notorious black transplantologists have been spotted near the Ukrainian battlefields, which coincided with the accounts of sudden deaths and wounded soldiers. Conveniently, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine has recently voted 2 laws to significantly simplify organ harvesting and made the export of organs tax-free. Guys, that country is a rotten cesspit. And then there's this artist who's been going around major European cities, and this one is apparently in New York, where he's doing this caricatures of Zelensky on the sidewalks. Here he painted Zelensky as a grasshopper. Quite well done. Now this is something that will make my Zazi stalker very happy. The Kremlin has put opposition leader Alexei Navalny in solitary confinement for the 10th time since August 2022. We echo the concerns of more than 170 Russian doctors who are calling for an end to the mistreatment of Navalny and for provision of all appropriate medical care. And then Hassan Nafi responded to this. Brought to you by the people who have put political prisoner Julian Assange in solitary confinement for more than 4 years, simply because he told the truth about the US's war crimes in Iraq. That is very applicable, but let's come back to Navalny. I have published it in previous Skidmarks. Navalny was on the CIA payroll, and the FSB caught him red-handed, taking money from them and documents with instructions of what to do. They were planning a color revolution in Moscow. So, the last time I saw pictures of Navalny was sitting in the prison room, in a workshop in the prison, making uniforms for the soldiers. My Nazi stalker, there's your great hero. They've got him tightly under control. And then we have this. State senator fighting to stop Ukrainian troops from training in Oklahoma. Well, that US senator tried, but I saw images of the soldiers actually arriving there. From the Americans, looks like some of them are busy waking up. This is quite an interesting graph. You can stop the show and look at it if you want to look at more details. It gives the median household in United States by ethnic group. The highest earners, highest income is the Indian Americans, $100,500. And then it's Filipino, Taiwanese, and it goes down. And the lowest, can you believe it? African Americans. I wonder why. And then we have this from Vasily Nembenja. He's a Russian guy at the UN. The origins of the difficult situation in which we all find ourselves lie in Washington's unstoppable desire to play the role of a world policeman, which he himself appropriated. According to a document prepared in 2022 by the US Congressional Research Service, it follows that since 1991, when the United States declared itself the winner of the Cold War, 251 cases of the use of the US Armed Forces abroad have been recorded. According to the US Bureau of Census, as of 2022, there are over 16 million veterans in the United States. That is, those who directly took part in the hostilities. And this, despite the fact that no one has attacked the United States for 2 decades. Think about that. 16 million veterans. And the tragic part of it is many of those veterans are living on the streets and living under bridges and living in parks and things like that. The fucking US management has got billions of dollars to send to the Ukraine, but they don't look after their own. And then here are some more disturbing news for my Nazi stalker. It will take about 5 years for the Pentagon to restore stockpiles of weapons and ammunition that have dried up due to assistance to Ukraine. This follows from a study by a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, the retired US Marine Corps Colonel Mark Kanchan. For javelin complexes and artillery depots of 155mm shells, taking into account investments, it will take 5 years for Stinger manpads, 5 years for the 155s, and 6 years for the Stinger manpads. At the same time, as the expert notes, at the same rate of production, military companies will not be able to restore the required level of strategic reserve. Think about that. And then we have this. Iran is fueling Russia's war in Ukraine with its provision of UAV technology, Blinken said. And therefore the USA is imposing sanctions against the Iranians. And here is the tweet that Blinken sent out. Iran is fueling Russia's war in Ukraine with its provision of UAV technology. Today, the United States sanctioned 7 people involved in Iran's UAV and ballistic missile programs. Programs Moscow is using to target Ukraine's critical infrastructure. What is this story? They can arm anybody and they can assist, and look what they're doing in the Ukraine. But Russia cannot have friends. These guys are in for a hell of a shock. And then we get to that what a fuck moment. And I'm going to show it again. I have showed something like this previously. And the poster said, in case you were wondering why the world is so stinking screwed up, this is all the proof most people needed to believe that a man actually landed on the moon. That was, look, I was one of those people. My whole life was a fucking lie, but in any case, that's the world we live in. Please, give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing, and I thank you a lot for your support.